My fiance confessed that he's ashamed of my poor family. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I grew up really poor, but my family has come up in life. My father opened up his own business and my mom and him run it. Although it's not a huge lucrative business, it's still comfortable enough for my siblings and I to be happy. Because of the way that I grew up, I knew that I wanted to marry a rich man, and he had to be rich. I had 5 serious relationships before I turned 25. I broke up with each guy because I knew that they weren't going to be able to give me the life I wanted. There's 2 things I know. I did not want to get to 27 and not be married, so I knew I had to act quickly. Started hanging out where I knew rich people would hang out. This is where I met my bestie. This girl had my back. If she was going to Paris, she'd take me to Paris. She would pay for everything. My parents neglected her and my family basically took her in. So she would come to my parents' house once or twice a week to have dinner. A few weeks later, she introduced me to my now fiance, and she hated him. He told me to stay away from him, but I couldn't listen. See, he's hot, plus he has money, and he targeted me. The first night he met me, he could not stop looking at me. We hung out every day for a week, and after that, he asked me to be his girlfriend. Of course, I said yes. A few months later, I moved in with him. My family approved. His family loved me too. Sometimes he would comment on my family's house, for the way that they dress. My parents came over to his parents for dinner. He told my dad in passing that it looked like he didn't have enough time to get ready. My dad was wearing a button-up shirt. He and I got into a huge fight that night, and that's when he confessed that he was embarrassed by my family. That's when my boyfriend's parents asked me to forgive him. They said they were ashamed of his behavior. I forgave him, and once I did, he proposed. He told me he wanted me to be a stay-at-home wife. That was my dream. All I wanted was to have kids and raise them at home. Parents were happy about the engagement, and so were his. As we started planning the wedding, he started saying things like, "I hope your parents aren't going to wear what they usually wear to the wedding." And he insisted that my dad needed to buy a $3,000 suit. Otherwise, he wouldn't look expensive enough. And that's verbatim. We got into another huge fight. He showed up to my house with a Mercedes apologizing. I'm not sure what to do. Should I even marry him? I know my life with him will be complete luxury. What should I do?
My boyfriend is threatening to break up with me if I don't agree to a threesome? Welcome to The Confessional, a series where you guys send me your story times on here and I tell them on TikTok so you can get advice. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years. When we first met, we were so compatible in every single way possible. Not so much, babe. He started a new job and he's been cold and distant, so I figured it was just the stress. As we were about to start having, you know what, doing the dirty, he asked me if I've ever had a threesome, which he definitely knows I have not. So him asking me was an excuse to even bring it up. Duh. I said, of course not. And he said, would you ever want to? I quickly said, no, I would never want to have a threesome. I don't want to share you. That's when he rolled his eyes and said that he wasn't in the mood anymore. I told him he was being selfish since he was the one that had initiated and that he should at least help me finish. Then he said, not until you consider having a threesome. Girl, manipulation 101. He did not speak to me for the next 3 days. I finally asked him what was wrong. He said that he really wanted to have a threesome before we got married. That's when I asked him who he wanted to have the threesome with, and he said, a girl from my job. We all saw this coming, right? I instantly started to cry because I had a feeling that he had met somebody at work. Then he said he wouldn't talk to me until I stopped crying and behaved like a grown woman.
Well, that's rich, coming from a grown-ass man who just gave you the silent treatment for 3 days.
He then pulls out his phone and shows me a picture of her. Oh my God. Then he said, look at her in a bikini. She's got such a great body. This is especially cruel since he knows that I've been trying to lose weight for the past 1.5 years, and it's been really hard because of my thyroid. That's when I took his phone away and started checking his messages. He freaked out. Of course he did, because he's probably texting her. They followed each other on Snapchat, so I couldn't see what they were sending each other. When I checked his Instagram DMs, their messages were pretty innocent. What if he deleted the messages before he showed you her pictures knowing you might do that? You can't assume that the messages were innocent, babe. Sorry. When I came out of the bathroom, he called me a crazy bitch, which was the first time he'd ever called me any name. That's when he told me that he should have just cheated behind my back instead of offering to have a threesome as a courtesy to me. At this point, we were moving together, but he asked me to move my things out after 2 days. He said he wasn't ready to commit to somebody who's not open to having fun and doing new things. That's coercion. He can't force you to have sex with somebody. In an effort to stop him from moving me out, I said yes to the threesome. He got so excited, he texted her immediately and said, it's on. 2 days later, he asked me to go get waxed. Waxed? The night of the threesome arrived and she came over in a red dress. As soon as she saw my boyfriend, she jumped into his arms and they started making out. Went into the bedroom and immediately they started ripping each other's clothes off. It's like I wasn't even there. That's when she grabbed my hand and pulled me onto the bed and started getting me naked too. My boyfriend came over to me on the bed and started kissing me, but that's when I got up and I couldn't do it. He said, you guys go ahead, I'll leave. My boyfriend got so mad, he kicked me out. 2 days later, I get a message from the girl asking me to go on a date. What? During the date, she apologized for my boyfriend's behavior and said that she didn't realize he was coercing me into doing it. Then she said she was actually more attracted to me than my boyfriend because she's more into girls. Oh my God. That's when she leaned over and tried to kiss me, but I pulled away. I told her I was in love with my boyfriend, that I was not interested in her like that. That's when she broke my heart and told me that he was flirting with all the girls at her job, not just her. And that he had already approached one of the other girls at their job to have a threesome, but hadn't told me yet. Should I accept this or should I just move on? I definitely think you need to move on. Someone who loves you is never going to try to coerce you into having relations with somebody else. Do you realize how wrong that is? What do you guys think? Drop your advice in the comments. I love you guys. Bye. I got drunk at my wedding and made out with the best man. Girl, what? Welcome to the confessional. Send in your story times and I'm gonna read them on here. My husband and I got married 2 months ago. Girl, 2 months. My husband's family is Christian and they are very strict. My mother-in-law chose my wedding dress. During the planning of the wedding, my husband had his best friend with him at all times. And during that time, I caught his best friend staring at me several times. Spicy! Every time we caught each other's eye, we would just stare at each other for a few seconds and then look away. The night of our rehearsal dinner, he came up to me and asked me if I was stressed. I responded by saying yes. Then he offered me a drink. My husband doesn't really like me drinking, so we went to the bathroom and took shots together. It was actually really fun and exciting, and we both hit it off that night. If you're wondering if I felt guilty, no, I did not. We ended up drinking 3 shots each, and he almost kissed me. At least I got the feeling. Too much blush? The attraction between us was palpable, and when I looked down, his... Oh my God! His thing-a-ling was hard. Our wedding was the next night and I couldn't stop thinking about his best friend. As I was getting ready for the wedding, he came and knocked on my door while the makeup artist was doing my makeup. Oh my gosh. And said that I looked so beautiful, he couldn't believe it. That's when the makeup artist asked him to leave and said, the groom can't be in here. That's when I said, that's not the groom. That's my husband's best friend. Oh, damn. The ceremony goes off without a hitch and we go to the reception. This is where it gets juicy. My fiance and I had practiced a dance for us to do for the guest, but he refused at the last minute. I instantly get upset at my fiance, walk straight up to his best friend and ask him if he wants to dance. We get up, start dancing, and instantly my husband gets up to dance with his cousin? Ew. Ew, what? Why is he trying to dance with his cousin and not his new wife? That's when all the guests jump up and join us on the dance floor. After 30 minutes of dancing, he takes me by the hand, the best friend, takes me by the hand and walks me outside. Suddenly we're alone and he kisses me. The butterflies in my stomach went crazy and we couldn't stop making out. Luckily, nobody saw us. We went back to the party and pretended like nothing happened. Oh girl, something did happen. After spending 2 weeks in Greece with my husband for our honeymoon, I was completely unhappy. A little background, we had only known each other for a year before we got married. We had never even traveled together at that point and he was being an absolute nightmare. After we got back, I decided to hook up with his best friend and we did it. We've been having an affair ever since then. I asked my husband for a divorce, but he won't give it to me because of a visa issue. What should I do? In my professional opinion as a story timer here on TikTok, I would say be honest with your husband, say to him that you don't want to be with him. Go be happy with a bestie. Travel with him before you get married. Everyone leave your advice in the comments. I love you guys. Bye. I f***ed my personal trainer while my husband was home. Oh my God. Welcome to the confessional, a series where you guys send me your story times through here and I tell them here on TikTok so that you guys can get some genuine advice. From the day I met my husband, he would fat shame me. What is he, an Adonis made out of muscles? He's always complained about how I have a soft body and wants me to have abs like all those Insta models. I'm not the type to keep my mouth shut, so I told him to get me a personal trainer. We've been married 6 years now and I've never bothered to go to the gym, not even one day. He likes going to the gym religiously and is in really good shape. So what? That doesn't mean that he gets to fat shame you ever. I was actually joking about the personal trainer, but he actually agreed to it. He told me that he could only get me a male trainer, but he thought it was okay because he was a very good trainer. Never did I expect that this guy would turn my life around in the best way possible. Yes! By the way, I'm not even looking into a mirror right now. I'm reading off my cell phone. The trainer came over the next day and I was embarrassed to see how hot and attractive he was. We sat down and spoke for about 20 minutes and he asked me all about my goals. I know I must sound stupid. No, you don't. But getting the attention from such a hot guy made me feel seen again. Babe, that's because your husband doesn't make you feel seen. Now, here's the thing. I felt like he was attracted to me too. He kept staring into my eyes and would smile all the time. I was trying not to misinterpret things since he is so attractive and he probably smiles at all his clients, which He probably does. But then he started putting his hands around my waist, my shoulders, and my arms. I know the difference between a man's touch and a trainer's touch. Oh my God. This was a man's touch. We were working out in the backyard, and that's when my husband came over and said he was leaving to run some errands. We finished the workout session and I was super sweaty. It was amazing. This man proceeded to stay with me for the next hour and a half talking about my goals once again. Wait, that's so sweet. 2 days later, he came over for our second session, and that's when shit went down. In preparation for our second session, I drove myself to Lululemon and bought the tightest leggings I could find. I would do the same. I even bought the matching sports bra and wore a two-piece set for the first time ever. Girl, you go. Luckily, my husband had already left to the gym, so we were all by ourselves. As soon as my trainer came in through the door, he complimented me and told me that I looked amazing. A few minutes into the workout, I couldn't help myself any longer, and I asked him if he was attracted to me. Damn! He answered yes right away, and we both started blushing and laughing at the same time. Now that I managed to break the ice, I would leave him to make the next move. And he did. He stood behind me while I was doing some squats, and I felt it. God. Girl, I want to live vicariously through you so bad. I turned around and we started making out passionately. As we were kissing, his hands started moving elsewhere, north and south. My knees were trembling. Yeah. My husband is not the most affectionate guy, so I was in much need of some loving. When we stopped kissing, we started laughing again at what we had just done. 2 minutes later, I hear my husband coming home. We quickly separated, but the next day it went further. This time my husband stayed home and we couldn't keep our hands off each other. My husband tends to lock himself in his office when he's looking at corn. And as soon as my trainer came over, he locked himself in his office, which means you know what. I knew it was our chance, so I grabbed his hand and took him to the back house. He pulled my pants down and he went at it. Then I pulled down his pants and I went at it. And then we did the dirty. As soon as we finished, we went outside and pretended like we were just done working out, which you could believe because we were both sweaty AF. It's been 2 months since I've been working out with my trainer and it's going amazing. I've managed to lose 10 pounds. I look amazing and I feel even better because every time he comes over, we end up doing it. My husband, on the other hand, has no clue and I don't care. He still continues to fat shame me, by the way, and he continues to show me pictures of girls on Instagram who he wishes I would look like. I'm pretty sure he's having an affair with his assistant. At this point, I don't care. I'm hiring a divorce lawyer and I'm getting half of everything. As you should. Should I feel guilty? I don't think he should find out that you're cheating because then you can't get half of everything. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Tell your husband about the trainer after you get a divorce. I mean, I'm sure he's gonna find out anyway. Go live your best life, get in shape, do the dirty, do whatever you want to do with this man, but be careful with your husband. Love you guys. Bye.
Storytime about how my father bribed my boyfriend to not break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's on my Instagram. Unfortunately, I have a lot of anxiety and I'm a very, very shy person. So it's always been hard for me to find friends and even harder to date men. I'm 37 and I've only ever been on one date. I come from a Latin family and this is unforgivable to them. Since I turned 20, my family has always asked me every single day of my life when I'm gonna find a man. As you can imagine, this adds even more to my anxiety because I just feel extremely pressured. Remember that one date I went on? Well, that was actually set up through my parents. I was 25 years old and my mom started getting personal training. Her personal trainer is the one she set up the date with. And this guy was a nightmare. He was rude to the waiters of the restaurant we went to, and immediately after that, I just left. I didn't even give him a second chance. As you can imagine, my parents were furious. My mom actually told me that she wanted me to marry this guy, and I was like, have you met him? I've always been completely misunderstood. Fast forward to me being 37, I landed my dream job in New York City and I moved away from home. I was happy being independent and moving away from my parents. I even lost my virginity and I was happy about it. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my father bribed my boyfriend to not break up with me. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's something on Instagram. Finally lost my virginity at 37 years old. I was living by myself in New York City and I had finally moved away from my toxic parents. But my parents would call me every single day. And guess what they would ask? Did you finally meet someone at work? Apparently, I was about to meet somebody at work that I would marry. So this is how I met the guy I lost my virginity to. At work. I guess my parents were right. I work in fashion and marketing and every day I went to work I had to dress up really well. And it was fun. Again, for the first time in my life, I was coming out of my shell. One of the editors at my job started noticing me. He invited me out to coffee and told me he wanted to show me the ropes. This was the first time that I found myself really attracted to a man. As you can imagine, I was so down. Ended up going to a bar and having wine together. After that, everything is a blur. I know that I kissed him and he kissed me back. That's when he asked me to go on a second date. And on the second date, we did it. I ended up losing my virginity and I called my parents and told them. This actually made them very happy. But now they said I had to marry the guy. But guess what? This guy wanted to be my boyfriend. And we started dating. But then I found something out. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend thinks I'm disgusting for having periods and
refuses to touch me or even have sexy time. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for 3 months. We met on a dating app. He works in financing and I own my own business. He's 28 and I'm 22, but he is so not mature. When we first met, he came across as a really intelligent guy. After 6 dates, he asked me if I wanted to be his girlfriend and I said yes. I did feel like he was rushing into it a little bit, but I decided to take the risk. A few days after he asked me to be his girlfriend, I mentioned to him that I was going to get off the pill. I was having a lot of hormonal problems and the pill was probably causing it, and I knew that this was going to make my periods really heavy again. Well, when I said this to him, he said, "Wow, that's disgusting." Then he said, "My ex never had periods because she was always on the pill." Isn't that impossible? He was just lying to make me feel bad. And I literally sat there in the restaurant explaining to him why periods happen and why they are important. By the end of the conversation, he said it was still gross and that he wouldn't want to touch me when I was on it in case he got blood on him. Then he brought up his ex again. He said that she was always so clean. I got up from the table and I walked away. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend told me I'm disgusting for getting my period and he refuses to touch me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. The following day, he called me and asked me if I still had my period. I told him no, and he said, "Okay, then I can come over." When he came over to my apartment, I asked him what was his problem with periods. He told me that it was disgusting and that women should try to get rid of them. Then he started insisting on me taking the pill again so that I could stop having periods. I told him he had no right over my body and that I would do whatever I wanted. He ended up going home and we didn't speak for a few days. He finally calls me and tells me that he's sorry for calling me disgusting. But this time I actually had my period. So when he came over, I wanted to test him. I kissed him and told him that I wanted to do it. Then he said, "Okay." I told him I had to go to the bathroom to remove my pad. Then he said, "Are you for real? That's so gross. Why would you invite me over knowing that you have your period?" Then he said that he wouldn't come near me with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, this 28-year-old man said that. Then he told me that I probably smell really bad down there and that I should probably go take a shower right away. I didn't even know what to say to him. I opened my front door and I stood there. And he left. An hour later, he posts on his story that he's at a club with his friends. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just so that I could keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. That's when he started to cry. Remember, I don't even have a pregnancy test to show or anything. But surprisingly, he didn't ask for proof of my pregnancy. He just kept crying on the couch. I asked him if he was happy, but clearly he was not. But he lied and said, "Yeah, of course I'm happy." Seeing how vulnerable he was, I took advantage of the situation and I brought up marriage. I told him we should get engaged soon so that we could tell his family. Then he said, "Are you sure you want to get married?" And I said, "Of course, we're gonna have a baby." Then he sat there for a minute and thought about it. Finally, he got down on one knee and said, "Do you want to marry me?" I said yes, and this time I cried for real. All my dreams were coming true. After that, things started moving really fast. We invited both our families to my apartment and we hosted a dinner. We broke the news to them that I was pregnant. Again, nobody asked for proof of the pregnancy though. Our families were so happy and excited. That very same night, he gave me a beautiful engagement ring. His mom even started planning the baby shower. Let me remind you, I'm actually not pregnant, so I had to come up with a plan. You'll never guess what I did. Part 3 is up. Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. His mom started planning the baby shower and there was no turning back. Even my mom got involved in the planning of the baby shower. So like I said, I'm really not pregnant at this point. So I started trying to get pregnant, but my damn boyfriend just wouldn't touch me. I decided to check his phone again and saw that he was still talking to some girls on Instagram. So I decided to confront him at this point. I mean, we are engaged and I'm supposedly pregnant with his baby. I confronted him and he just got angry at me. He said that if he was gonna marry me and have a baby with me, he would need to talk to other girls and that was not a negotiation for him. Then he confessed that he was seeing 2 other girls on the side and that there was no way he was gonna stop seeing them and that I couldn't do anything about it. But his confession actually made me fall out of love with him. Now I'm planning to break up with him. But what do I do about the fake pregnancy? I do want to make him pay for what he said to me, but I don't want to hurt our families either. Should I just come clean? What should I do?
My husband won't stop slut-shaming me because I told him that I used to strip. How do I get him to stop? Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's sent me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 3 years. We actually got separated at the beginning of this year, and it was actually good for the both of us. My husband's always been a little bit, macho is the way I want to put it. He sometimes has a habit of humiliating me in front of his friends. I actually have a job that pays more than his, and this has always been a problem for him because he feels like he should be the breadwinner. So he basically makes jokes about how I'm the guy in the relationship. Our friends and family think it's totally inappropriate, but I think it's kind of funny. But when my friends explained it to me, it is kind of bad, I guess. I own 2 e-commerce businesses that I run from our house, so I'm essentially home all day. Recently, we decided that we wanted to have kids, so we started trying. Unfortunately, my husband comes comes from a family where they believe the women should be doing all the cooking and the cleaning. So my husband expects for me to do all of those things. And if I don't, he tells me that I'm a bad wife. He also likes to control how I dress, and he doesn't like me drinking. A few weeks ago, we went to a friend's party and I got a little drunk. And on the way home, I decided to make a confession that I used to be a stripper. Part 2 is up. My husband won't stop slut-shaming me because I told him that I used to strip. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, I said me on Instagram. And that's when I confessed that I used to be a stripper. Right then and there, he pulls the car over to the side of the road. Then he actually started interrogating me. He asked me when I started, how long I did it for, where I stripped, what I wore, what the worst thing I had ever done was. He was trying to get all the tea. Immediately, I regretted it. I honestly didn't think that it was going to be a big deal. I mean, we have been married for 3 years now, so I thought that he would be more accepting of it. But that's when I remembered he comes from a family where they think that women shouldn't even have rights. I tried to take it back as a joke, and he said that's not going to work. He proceeded to ask me questions for 2 hours on the side of the road. It was already 3 in the morning. By the end of it, I was so exhausted I started to cry and begged him to take me home. Then he said that he was afraid of even going to bed with me because I might give him an STD. That's when he told me that I probably took money for SEX. I had succeeded into digging myself into the deepest hole ever. I begged him to forget and he wouldn't. That's when he pulled out his phone and started texting his brothers. He told them everything. When we got home, he made me sleep on the couch. Part 3 is up. Husband won't stop slut-shaming me because I told him that I used to strip. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. He actually made me sleep on the couch for a full week. And he basically gave me the cold shoulder every single day. He wouldn't even look at me when I talked to him. He would do was ask me for food. Sometimes he'll just come up to me and be like, what are you doing, slut? His brothers told him that I was probably doing the dirty with all of these guys at the strip club. And that he shouldn't believe a word that I say. A few nights ago, he sat me down and started interrogating me again. He told me that he wanted me to tell him the truth. And for me to just confess that I had done it with all of my clients at the strip club. He's actually even threatening to go to the strip club where I used to work to ask questions about me. Mind you, the strip club is like 10 hours away from where we live. He even checked my phone and my laptop. He says that he's scared that I might still be in contact with my clients from the strip club, and that he doesn't know what I'm capable of anymore. I've been begging him for forgiveness every single day, but I kind of want to tell him to F off now. Can't take him calling me names anymore. Luckily, my parents fully support me and want me to move in with them. The only thing that I'm afraid of is that if we do get a divorce, he's gonna try to take all of my money. I have way more money than he does in the bank, and he knows it. I've been totally honest about how much money I earn. Big mistake. What should I do? Story time about how my father is obsessed with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. And trigger warning. My mom and dad had me when they were very, very young. My mom was 14 years old when she got pregnant with me. From what my mom told me, my parents were pretty much together throughout the whole pregnancy. Even though they were both in high school, they wanted to move in together and try to raise me like a regular family. But my maternal grandmother had a very big issue with this. She wanted my mom to continue going to high school and possibly even give me up for adoption. But my mom was not having it, so she decided to move out with my dad. Once I was born, unfortunately, my parents just couldn't take care of me. My dad was too busy playing his football and trying to get a scholarship. And my mom just didn't really know how to take care of a child. I mean, she was a child herself. This is when my grandmother stepped in and decided to take me in, which I thank God for every single day of my life. My grandmother raised me as her own daughter, and she has been the most amazing woman in my entire life. My parents split up, and through most of my childhood, I lived with my mom and my grandmother. I didn't see my dad for about 10 years. By the time I saw him again, I was 15 years old. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my father is obsessed with me. Disclaimer, is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. And trigger warning. I finally saw my father again when I was 15 years old. From the moment he saw me, he wanted to hug me and kiss me all the time. At first, I thought it was normal because he's my father and he hadn't seen me in over 10 years. After a few weeks of him coming to visit me, I started feeling really strange. This was also around the time where I was getting noticed by boys in school. And you know that feeling you get when you know a guy likes you? Well, that's the feeling I started getting from my own father. Every time he touched me, it was like too touchy. And every kiss was just strange. One of the things that really started to bother me was that he liked going to the beach, and he wanted to make it a thing. He would always say, let's go to the beach on the weekend, but I didn't feel comfortable with him. First off, he never invited my mom to come or my grandma, so it was always just me and him. He even took me shopping for bikinis, and this is when my stomach dropped. At the bikini shop, he asked for small bikinis, like the type that show a lot of skin. Told him I wasn't comfortable with that. I wanted a bathing suit. He said no and bought me a thong bikini. He stared at me all day at the beach. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how my father is obsessed with me, part 3. After he bought me the thong bikini and forced me to wear it at the beach, I noticed he was staring at me. I wrapped myself in a towel and told him I wanted to leave. After that, I told my mom and my grandma how I felt about my dad. They thought that I was exaggerating, but I knew that I wasn't. My mom asked him to never ever do anything like that again, and he said he wouldn't. After that, he would always do certain things, like stare at me too much, or always want to hug me and kiss me. And for my own comfort and safety, I put a lot of space between him and I. When I was 18, I finally got my first boyfriend. He became enraged when my mom told him. He told my mom that I was acting like a slut. That's when I cut him out completely from my life. A year later, I got on Instagram and that's when he started following me there. He started leaving strange comments on all my pictures, and eventually he started offering me money to spend more time with him. I told him I wasn't comfortable with him. That's when he told me that all he wanted to do was watch me take a bath, and that he would pay me thousands if I let him. My grandmother and my mom have completely cut him out of our lives. On the day of my wedding, we hired security to keep him away. And of course, he managed to show up, but security kicked him out. I'm thinking I should get a restraining order. Luckily, my mental health hasn't suffered too much from this. He's obviously an unwell person, but I actually feel really bad for him. And I feel like getting a restraining order is just gonna make things worse. What the heck should I do? Bye. Storytime about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. I'll tell you that last month I made $60,000. This clear is not my story time and send me on Instagram. So at the beginning I had to lie about my age. I'm really 36 years old, but I say I'm 22. I do look a lot younger than I am, and of course I get filler and Botox. I started my Instagram account 6 years ago. My inspirations were Anna Cherie, Amanda Lee, Sam Jojo, and Abigail Ratchford. I mean Abigail Ratchet. I basically copied all of these girls' pictures. Within a month of starting my Instagram account, I had 10,000 followers. And yes, all of them were males. But I didn't really start making money until 2018. You know, like every other girl on Instagram, I signed up for OF. And that's when I started making serious money. But I was also making money from Instagram. Brands would send me clothes and watches and protein powders, stuff like that. Eventually, I became an ambassador for one of the biggest Instagram clothing stores. I think we all know what I'm talking about. Fashion Hova, and I started making a lot of money then. So I basically started living above my means. I got myself a new apartment in Beverly Hills, and it was $6,000 a month. I also got myself a Mercedes, and I would exclusively shop at Air One. I would also go shopping at Rodeo Drive almost every day because I wanted the paparazzi to get pictures of me. And I even called the paparazzi on me a few times, so I had to pay them like $2,000 out of pocket. So yeah, I was spending a lot of money. Whatever money I got that month, I would literally spend it by the end. One month I spent $25,000 going out with friends. I would usually pick up the bill. This is what started getting me into trouble. Part 2 is Storytime about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. After I spent the $25,000 in 1 month, I decided I needed another income source. So I thought of escorting. One of my very good friends in LA was also an escort, and she told me about it, but I was like, I can't do that. But one day I called her and she told me everything. She gets contacted through Instagram by very, very rich men, like billionaires. I honestly didn't believe her at first, but then she showed me receipts. Her bank account had more than $1 million in it. She told me that she had only been doing it for 6 months. She put me in contact with several people and they had to verify a bunch of my stuff. Then after a week, I was finally in. I was really scared. I had to go get my passport renewed. This meant that I was going to be traveling internationally with men that I didn't know. A few days later, I get a message on Instagram from an account. The guy that owned this account was clearly very rich. It wasn't him contacting me, it was his assistant. He got my information and 2 days later, I was on a private plane. I landed in a foreign country and I spent the entire weekend with this guy. He didn't speak English. Basically took me around his city and showed me off for his friends. I honestly didn't feel uncomfortable at any point and he didn't try anything. In fact, he was actually super shy, but his friends on the other hand were really handsy. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I became an Instagram model / escort for billionaires. That's when his friends started getting really handsy. We were in a really expensive high-rise and the apartment was literally worth millions. And I knew that all of these guys were used to getting whatever they wanted. One of the friends actually grabbed my arm and told me to sit on his lap, but I told him I couldn't. He wasn't the one that hired me to be there, so I had to go straight to the guy that hired me. I told him that his friends were making me uncomfortable and he said, okay, we should leave then. I was actually shocked that he listened to what I wanted. Now one of my regular clients and I travel with him almost every 2 months. So let me tell you how much he paid me. For the 3-day weekend, I ended up with $50,000. Yep, that's right. But let me tell you a little about the dark side of this. A few jobs later, I ended up with somebody who was completely crazy. I ended up going to Vegas with this guy. He was approximately 10 years younger than me and was filthy rich. But he was also a complete psycho. He bought me this whole outfit that he wanted me to wear the entire night. I told him I was more comfortable in my clothes. I was wearing a Fendi dress. It looked great. That's when he said, no, you're gonna wear this. I ended up walking around Vegas in a micro mini skirt and a bikini top. By the end of this night, he was getting really aggressive. I tried to stay quiet, hoping that he would just forget that I was in his car. Suddenly, he turned to look at me and wanted me to do something. When I said no, he grabbed me by the hair and told me that he owned me for the night. Then he said, I'll add an extra $20,000 in there for you. And it does get worse. But now I learned to save my money. I no longer pay for my friends' drinks and food. I still have my $6,000 apartment and I upgraded my car. I live like a princess. I also bought my parents a house though. It was definitely one of the happiest days of my life. And believe it or not, I actually did end up finding love. My boyfriend is okay with my job, but he just asked me to be safe. Of course, he asked me every day to quit because he wants to support me, but he can't give me the life I've given myself. What should I do?
My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. My husband and I have a really toxic relationship. When he and I first started dating, I was extremely jealous. I would instigate fights almost every single day. Now that we're married, I'm definitely less jealous. But he's always been jealous throughout our relationship. He tries to control everything I do, down to the way I dress and even the people I can or cannot hang out with. He even insisted that I quit my job, which I did. He's invested a lot in Tesla and crypto, so he makes a lot of money without having to leave the house, which yes, is totally amazing, but that means he and I are together all the time. And with his jealousy, sometimes I just can't stand him. I've tried to help him with his jealousy because I used to be in that place. And when I try to talk to him about it, he just gets mad at me. Whenever he sees that I post something on Instagram, he gets angry. He says that I'm looking for attention, which of course I am, but not from guys. Everyone posts on social media because they want to show off their life. A little on my sister. We're identical twins, and we're really, really close. Unfortunately, my sister got laid off from her job last year. That's when she decided to start her OnlyFriends. I support her in everything she wants to do. She's actually making really good money from it, so she's really happy about it. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to look for something. When I see my sister's pictures, part 2 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's on Instagram. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to transfer some money from his account to mine. When I started looking for his banking app, I noticed something else on his screen. I had never seen this before, so I clicked on it. And as soon as I opened it, I see my sister's pictures. And I knew it was her OnlyFriends right away. By the way, I had never told my husband that my sister had an OnlyFriends. She wouldn't even post about it on her social media. So the fact that he found it makes me believe that he had my phone bugged or something. But here's the thing. He was using a different name for his account. So it was likely that my sister did not know it was him. From there, I could see that he was following a bunch of other girls. And when I went to their messages, he had paid over hundreds of dollars every single day to all of these girls. Can you imagine how much money that is? My husband came into the room and saw me on his phone. Of course, he didn't freak out because he never thought that I would find it. But I confronted him right away. But he didn't even flinch. He said he had every right to go on OnlyFans because it was the same thing as going to any website. I told him to at least unfollow my sister and he said that he wouldn't. He said he loved it because it was like watching me do naughty things. Then he said, "Isn't this better than cheating on you?" I was flabbergasted. Part 3 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's on Instagram. That's when he told me that it was better than him cheating on me. And I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I threatened him. I told him that if he didn't stop following my sister, that I would start my own OnlyFriends account. Like I said, he's really jealous. So he went berserk. He ripped my phone out of my hand and threw it against the wall. Then he told me that the only reason he asked me to quit my job was so that I wouldn't be around other men. By the way, I used to be a personal trainer, and most of the time I would only train women. I told him that my sister and I wouldn't be comfortable with him looking at our OnlyFriends. It was so disturbing. Oh, and I also told him that he needed to stop controlling me, and that I could buy my own phone with my own money and start my own account. Then he came to his senses and started to apologize. And I also told him that I was suspecting that he bugged my phone, and that he was receiving my messages, because there was no other way he could have found out about my sister's account. Then he calmed down and explained things to me. He said that he had bugged my phone a few months ago because I was posting too much on Instagram and it was bothering him. So basically, he has access to my DMs and all my text messages. Promised to stop doing that and that he would buy me a new phone. And that's how he found out about my sister's OnlyFriends. He said he only signed up out of curiosity, and that he only wanted to see a few pictures and then delete it. But the more he kept looking at her pictures, the more he would think of me, and that it turned him on. And in front of me, he deactivated his account and deleted everything. He promised me that he would never do that again. Of course, I haven't forgiven him though. Haven't even spoken to him in days. But every time he sees me, he tries to kiss me and hug me. And when I push him away, he tries even harder. Honestly, I think he likes it. I do believe that he's secretly addicted to drama and that he thrives on it. I'm planning on never telling my sister about it. I don't think she'd feel comfortable around him ever again. I mean, I don't feel comfortable around him right now. I'm so confused and I don't know if I should leave him or not. He's so controlling all the time. What should I do? Should I break up with my boyfriend for fat shaming me? My boyfriend and I started dating 2 years ago. At the beginning of our relationship, I was weighing 130 pounds. So back then, he never had a problem with my weight. In fact, he used to praise me and tell me that he loved my body. He always would tell me that my curves were sexy, and I would sometimes tell him that I wanted to lose weight, but he would always say no. In fact, a few months after we started dating, I went on a diet. I lost about 5 pounds in 2 weeks, and he told me that I needed to stop. He told me he liked my womanly body. So I stopped dieting. At first, I was happy that he loved my body so much, but at the same time, I didn't feel healthy, which is why I started the diet in the first place. After I stopped the diet, I still kept on eating healthy, with the exception that every now and then we would have pizza or fast food. But I still tried to keep it to a minimum. So my boyfriend is actually in the Marines, and he had to go away for a few months. This sent me into a depression because I missed him so much. And because of that, I started eating a lot. I would ask my mom to cook me my favorite meals, and I would basically just eat all day. At the time, I also didn't have a job, so that was making me depressed as well. So I ended up gaining 40 pounds. Part 2 is up. Should I break up with my boyfriend for fat shaming me? After he told me I looked disgusting, I instantly broke out into tears. That's when he said, "What did you expect?" Then he said, "I've been away for months. The last thing I want to come home to is a huge gut." But then I started crying more and he kind of softened up. He said that we could work out together and that he could help me lose the weight.
He then pulls up his phone and shows me a picture of what he thinks I should look like. It was basically some random Instagram model that he followed, who was actually way skinnier than I was when he first met me. For the next week, he barely touched me, and he would make little snide remarks every time he saw me eating. For example, one night we decided to watch a movie at my place. I asked him if he wanted any snacks, and he said no. Then I told him I was probably gonna make some popcorn and if he wanted any. That's when he said I needed to watch what I was eating, especially at night, and that the last thing I needed was snacks during a movie. This obviously hurt my feelings. And of course, I started dieting again, but this time I was even more strict about it. I basically cut out every single thing that I like to eat, and I was only eating lean meats and salad, but very little portions. One night he invited his friends to come over to watch a football game. Instead of me having to cook, I offered to order them pizza and they said yes. When the pizzas finally arrived, my boyfriend said in front of everybody, "You don't get to eat any pizza because you still need to lose weight." I was so horrified, mortified, I wanted to literally crawl under a rock and die. His friends started laughing because they actually thought it was a joke. Then he says, "No, you guys, I'm serious. She's so fat." I couldn't believe my boyfriend was putting me down like that in front of his friends. I gave him the silent treatment, but he really didn't care. After a full month, I started finally losing weight. It's been 3 months now, and I'm weighing 120 pounds. Now he's all over me and constantly tells me that I look beautiful, but I'm never gonna forget how he treated me when I was heavier. I know that I should break up with him because of how he treated me, but I really do love him. And he's back to normal now. He loves me and touches me all the time. What should I do? Should I break up with my boyfriend for fat shaming me? While he was in the Marines, I ended up gaining 40 pounds. I was super depressed and I didn't have a job and I missed him so much. One day he calls me and tells me that he's gonna be home in 2 weeks. And that's when I knew I needed to start dieting again. But then part of me remembered that my boyfriend liked me when I was thicker and curvier. So what I did was I cut down on all the fried foods, but I still kept eating a lot during the day, which basically helped me maintain the weight instead of just losing weight. In preparation for his coming home, I went to get my hair done, my nails done. I even got a facial and I went to get wax down there, which of course is super painful. I even went to pick up some lingerie because nothing fit me at the time. I also cleaned my entire apartment and cooked him a really nice meal. To tell you, I even called his mother to ask her for the recipes. I was so excited to see him. He finally shows up to my house and I have everything ready. But as soon as he sees me, he asks me what happened. I said, "What do you mean?" Then all he said was, "You're fat." At first I laughed because I thought he was joking. Then he says, "What's so funny?" It's like he was instantly angry. I told him I gained some weight and that I didn't bother losing it because he liked me curvy. That's when he said, "Yeah, I like you curvy, not fat." Then he told me I looked disgusting. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime. It's sending me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, "Wow, you're growing into your body," or "Wow, you got great hips." He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, "Ew." He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Part 2. Storytime about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime. It's me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, "Oh, you know how he is." So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. That's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime. It's me on Instagram. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting, and that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and
segment 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13, and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, not my Storytime, instead of me on Instagram. My husband and I have a really toxic relationship. When he and I first started dating, I was extremely jealous. I would instigate fights almost every single day. Now that we're married, I'm definitely less jealous. But he's always been jealous throughout our relationship. He tries to control everything I do, down to the way I dress and even the people I can or cannot hang out with. He even insisted that I quit my job, which I did. He's invested a lot in Tesla and crypto, so he makes a lot of money without having to leave the house, which yes, is totally amazing, but that means he and I are together all the time. And with his jealousy, sometimes I just can't stand him. I've tried to help him with his jealousy because I used to be in that place. And when I try to talk to him about it, he just gets mad at me. Whenever he sees that I post something on Instagram, he gets angry. He says that I'm looking for attention, which of course I am, but not from guys. Everyone posts on social media because they want to show off their life. A little on my sister. We're identical twins, and we're really close. Unfortunately, my sister got laid off from her job last year. That's when she decided to start her OnlyFriends. I support her in everything she wants to do. She's actually making really good money from it, so she's really happy about it. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to look for something. When I see my sister's pictures, part 2 is up. Husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers is not my story time. It's not me on Instagram. That's when he told me that it was better than him cheating on me. And I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I threatened him. I told him that if he didn't stop following my sister, that I would start my own OnlyFriends account. Like I said, he's really jealous. So he went berserk. He ripped my phone out of my hand and threw it against the wall. Then he told me that the only reason he asked me to quit my job was so that I wouldn't be around other men. By the way, I used to be a personal trainer, and most of the time I would only train women. I told him that my sister and I wouldn't be comfortable with him looking at our OnlyFriends. It was so disturbing. Oh, and I also told him that he needed to stop controlling me, and that I could buy my own phone with my own money and start my own account. Then he came to his senses and started to apologize. And I also told him that I was suspecting that he bugged my phone, and that he was receiving my messages, because there was no other way he could have found out about my sister's account. Then he calmed down and explained things to me. He said that he had bugged my phone a few months ago because I was posting too much on Instagram and it was bothering him. So basically, he has access to my DMs and all my text messages. Promised to stop doing that and that he would buy me a new phone. And that's how he found out about my sister's OnlyFriends. He said he only signed up out of curiosity, and that he only wanted to see a few pictures and then delete it. But the more he kept looking at her pictures, the more he would think of me, and that it turned him on. And in front of me, he deactivated his account and deleted everything. He promised me that he would never do that again. Of course, I haven't forgiven him though. Haven't even spoken to him in days. But every time he sees me, he tries to kiss me and hug me. And when I push him away, he tries even harder. Honestly, I think he likes it. I do believe that he's secretly addicted to drama and that he thrives on it. I'm planning on never telling my sister about it. I don't think she'd feel comfortable around him ever again. I mean, I don't feel comfortable around him right now. I'm so confused and I don't know if I should leave him or not. He's so controlling all the time. What should I do? My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers is not my story time. It's not me on Instagram. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to transfer some money from his account to mine. When I started looking for his banking app, I noticed something else on his screen. I had never seen this before, so I clicked on it. And as soon as I opened it, I see my sister's pictures. And I knew it was her OnlyFriends right away. By the way, I had never told my husband that my sister had an OnlyFriends. She wouldn't even post about it on her social media. So the fact that he found it makes me believe that he had my phone bugged or something. But here's the thing. He was using a different name for his account. So it was likely that my sister did not know it was him. From there, I could see that he was following a bunch of other girls. And when I went to their messages, he had paid over hundreds of dollars every single day to all of these girls. Can you imagine how much money that is? My husband came into the room and saw me on his phone. Of course, he didn't freak out because he never thought that I would find it. But I confronted him right away. But he didn't even flinch. He said he had every right to go on OnlyFans because it was the same thing as going to any website. I told him to at least unfollow my sister and he said that he wouldn't. He said he loved it because it was like watching me do naughty things. Then he said, "Isn't this better than cheating on you?" I was flabbergasted. Part 3 is up.
Story time about how my asshole boyfriend criticizes everything I wear. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months. We're both pretty young. I'm 19 and he's 22. I could say that he's just young and he doesn't know how to treat a woman yet, but he's pretty immature in everything else. Now you might wonder why I'm with him. It's because I love him. I met him when I was 15 in high school and I've been in love with him ever since. He always used to tell me that I was too young for him, but finally when I turned 18, he started paying attention to me. I begged him to go on a date with me and he finally said yes. At first, everything was so amazing. He was fun, charismatic, and super affectionate. When he finally asked me to be his girlfriend, I was so happy. But then slowly he started criticizing everything I wear. He doesn't like when I wear hoodies or sweaters, leggings or pants, skirts that are too short, skirts that are too loose, or crop tops. First he would politely say things, but now he's just straight up mean about it. He told me when I'm around him I can wear skimpy clothes, but when we go out he wants me to wear stuff that's loose. So I literally changed everything I wore. I dressed only for him and I started hating myself. Part 2 of how my boyfriend criticizes everything I wear. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I completely changed the way I dressed just for him. He would always find something to criticize, even down to the jewelry or hair accessories or makeup that I wore. It got to the point where if I went shopping, I would send him pictures of the stuff that I wanted to buy for him to approve. Even my nails. Anytime I went to the nail salon, I would have to send him pictures of the nail polish or any designs I wanted to do. And don't think that he's paying for stuff. No, he's not. I finally opened up to my mom and told her everything. She told my dad and they both got really upset. My dad even called my boyfriend and told him to come over. My parents told him to stop being so controlling, otherwise the relationship would be over. Of course, my boyfriend pretended to be on his best behavior, apologized and said that he wouldn't do it anymore. But when we left my parents' house, he told me I was a snitch. Then he made me promise to never tell my parents anything about our relationship again. And I know I should just break up with him, but I do love him. I've been in love with him for years, and now that I'm with him, I don't want to lose him. But I know that I've put him up on a pedestal. It's been a few weeks since my parents intervened, but my boyfriend hasn't changed a thing. I decided to buy myself a designer purse that I've been wanting for years. As soon as he saw me with the purse, he said that my privilege was showing, and that I needed to go return it as soon as possible because it was embarrassing. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my boyfriend criticizes everything I wear. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. After he told me to return the designer purse, I said no. He then explained to me why I should be embarrassed to wear it. He said people that buy designer stuff are only trying to flaunt their wealth, and that people who do that are just trying to cover up their shortcomings. So basically, I'm trying to hide the fact that I'm not good at other things, or that I don't have good qualities. I couldn't believe what he was saying to me. For the first time ever, I defended myself and I told him he needed to leave me alone. And no, I didn't return the purse, and I'm not trying to flaunt my wealth either. So here's what I did. I started returning all the clothes that I bought just to wear for him and the ones he wants me to wear in front of other people. When he saw me again, he told me that I looked terrible. He said no one would take me seriously in my outfit with my designer purse. So I drove him back to his house because no, he doesn't have a car, and I've been ignoring his calls and messages for 4 days. My plan is to start treating him the way he treated me. I'm going to control and criticize everything he wears and see how he likes it. I think this is going to make things better. I don't want to break up with him because I do love him. What do you guys think? Storytime about how my boyfriend has a secret child with another woman. We've been together for 5 years, and I never knew that he had a child. His son is now 7 years old. A little backstory. When my boyfriend and I started dating, everything was great. He was the perfect boyfriend. He would drop anything to help me. He paid for everything, was super considerate, fun, and loving. But everything started to change last year when we moved in together. He told me that his job was starting to give him night shifts. Essentially, we never saw each other during the day or spent any time together. He also started telling me that he was too tired to go out on dates. I'm a paralegal and my office is really close to our apartment. So during my lunch break, I would go home to eat. One time that I came home, I caught him talking on the phone in the bathroom. I could only hear that he was whispering and it sent chills up my spine. When he came out of the bathroom, he was shocked to see me. I asked him who he was talking to and he acted dumb. He said he was just ordering a pizza. He was actually supposed to be sleeping because he worked the night shift. I knew something was wrong. I decided to follow him that night to work, and guess what? He didn't go to work. He went to another woman's house. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my boyfriend has a secret child with another woman. I followed him that night to what I thought was his job, but instead he drove 10 minutes away from our apartment to another woman's house. I parked a few cars away so I could see what he was doing. That's when a little boy and a woman come running out of the house. The woman kisses him on the mouth and he carries the little boy and hugs him. Believe it or not, I instantly got sick. I got out through the passenger door and vomited. I was horrified. My first thought was that he was married and I was the other woman. They walked into the house and I stayed waiting for him the entire night. He left that house at 6 in the morning the next day. But before he could get into his car, I confronted him. He was obviously shocked to see me there. He confessed that was his son, that he wasn't married to the woman. They were only together. So I was right. I was the other woman. He explained that he wasn't in love with the other woman and that he didn't have the heart to tell her he was in love with someone else. He got on his knees and apologized. Part 3 is up.